Hey everyone, welcome back to Playlist Parlay. I've got an exciting episode lined up, but I need your help. We're putting together playlists for some legendary bands and artists: Rush, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, Sarah Bareilles, and Aerosmith. As you know, I've got a busy schedule with gigs coming up, and I could really use the community's support. That's where you come in. Join our exclusive Discord channel and help me create the ultimate playlists for these incredible musicians. To get access, simply join our Collaborators Corner tier on Patreon for just $10 a month. Not only will your input make a huge difference, but you'll also get a shout out in each episode as a thank you for your support. Thanks for being part of this amazing journey, and let's get started. Episode 6, The Essential Dave Matthews Band with Tyler Bates. Music by Joe DeRose and Amici. Hi everyone, my guest this week is Tyler Bates, who is a singer, songwriter, guitar player. I'm really excited. This is probably, my secret reason for starting this podcast is we get to talk about the Dave Matthews Band today, which is probably my favorite band of all time. So Tyler, you do a band called Us for Love, and you guys cover Dave a lot.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, his music's some of my personal favorites to play. Like, it's challenging. I get into it super emotional, so it's always fun. It's always fun to gauge the audience too, to see who has extreme distaste on their face and who's really loving it at the same time. I always gauge that usually with Don't Drink the Water or something like that, because then people are like, what is this? Or they'll just like, yes, this one. So it's always fun to bust out some Dave.
Yeah, they kind of are a polarizing band.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about this a little bit before we started, that people seem to love this band or detest them.
Yep. Yeah.
And I don't understand the dislike. I can see, like, it's not my thing, but they're like, I have active hate.
I can't either, because, I mean, they're probably my favorite band. I mean, I've been listening to The Dead a lot lately, too, so it's teetering right there, but Dave's probably still number one for me.
Well, and a lot of similarities between Dave Matthews Band and The Dead.
And there's a rivalry there, too, I didn't know about. There's, like, an unspoken rivalry. I just, like, recently discovered this, because he sat in with Dead & Co. not so long ago.
Okay.
On their last tour, and did a few songs with them. And then, like, I was looking at the comments, and everyone was like, oh, get him off the stage, he's so terrible. I'm like, what is this? And then, like, I went to the Dave Matthews page, and everyone was like talking about The Dead and how they're not that good and they're too slow, and I'm just like, what is going on? I thought they would be friends.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it would be just the natural successor, really. I mean, The Dead started this whole jam band culture where you can follow the band around. I mean, in the past, I was talking with Scott Motton. I don't know if you know Scott he's in Murphy's.
I probably have met him, yeah.
But anyway, Scott and I were talking about how when he was on tour with Jeff Tate, how the show was so much on rails. It was all the MIDI tracks, and even the shtick between the songs, like had a click track still, so they knew when the song would come in, and it was very much on rails. And the Dead developed this whole style of, what are we going to play next? I don't know. Someone call one. And yeah. I don't think Dave is that loose where they call him on stage. They have a set list. But I've also seen people take set lists after the show where he's got something crossed off and something handwritten in from the stage.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that they have this whole jam band thing where it's not the same show. You can see them 4 or 5 times in a row if you want to follow them around. And you're going to get, the same songs off the new album. You're probably going to hear the same 3 songs at every one of those shows, but the other 10 are all going to be different,
Yeah.
And I've been guilty of that a few times in my life, of spending a whole summer following these guys around.
What's cool to them, like for me, is that they're a jam band, but usually with those bands, you have like guitar heroes that are in the band, like super well-known guitarists, and he's like the front man, and he's not like the main attraction here. Like the rest of the band is like the main attraction. Like you got, like flute players or saxophones, horns, just a whole horn section. And then they had violin too. So
yeah,
fiddle. So yeah.
Yeah, it really was a band that featured everybody. And, in the early days, I think that that cohesion was really, really great. I mean, at this point now, there's only 3 original members left. There's just the bass player, drummer, and Dave. Mm-hmm. Everyone else has kind of transitioned somehow or another.
Yeah.
Although Tim's been playing with them for
a long time,
most of it, but he's never really been an official member of the band until I don't even know if he is official, but I mean, he ought to be at this point. For the heyday for me, I watched him a lot the couple summers where Butch Taylor was playing with him and played piano. And that was sort of, for me, that the real golden era of the Dave Matthews Band. It was all the original members plus Tim plus Butch.
Yeah.
Right before Rashawn Ross came in and played trumpet. But yeah, that was sort of the heyday for me with them. But let's talk about how you got into music as a kid. How did you start playing? What's your background with music?
You know what? Funny enough, I think that a big influence for me was probably Guitar Hero.
Wow, okay.
Because I hung out with my friends all the time, and we'd play video games, and we'd play Guitar Hero all the time, and I was kind of interested in it. But then I got past that, and I was like, I kind of want to learn how to actually play these songs. I don't want to sit here and press buttons. So I think the very first band that really got me hooked onto music was Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Okay.
And it was Scar Tissue specifically. I don't know, I heard the song and I really connected with the solo and the guitar parts, and I was I felt like I could do that. So it was something that I felt I could do. And I think, funny enough, that's not even the first song I learned. The first song I challenged myself to learn was Under the Bridge, which probably wasn't a smart one to learn because it's kind of hard for your fingers as a first song. But yeah, that one, those guys were the ones that kind of got me into it, and kind of through video games in a weird way was my introduction into playing guitar. That's
another element of this that's a little surprising, is you're quite a bit younger than me to listen to a band that really had its heyday when I was in high school. So how did you kind of get hooked into the Dave Matthews Band, being a sort of younger guy?
I think I was just listening to YouTube, going through some 90s playlists, because Scar Tissue came out in the 90s, late 90s. I think I remember the first song I heard by Dave Matthews might have been Ants Marching, I think.
Okay.
But one of the ones that stuck out to me was I Did It. For some reason, I vividly remember the music video to that.
Yeah. Yeah, with Leroy having the little bomb there.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a good video. Cool, man. So that's how you get into music. What about just playing? When did you first pick up an instrument and start doing it?
Probably around age 13 or 14.
Okay.
I picked up the guitar. Technically, I picked it up around 5. My mom kind of in this weird situation. I was taking karate lessons, and then also at the karate place, they had guitar lessons in the back.
I mean, that makes sense.
It doesn't, but it was I don't know. I guess there was a guitar instructor there too, but somehow there was a connection, and she bought me an acoustic guitar, and I tried it and kind of was learning all the Campfire songs, and I gave up. I wasn't really interested, and I was I want an electric guitar, and she was like, no, not until you learn how to play the acoustic guitar. And I was like, fine, I'm not going to do it. Then flash forward years later when Guitar Hero came out, and kind of I grew up a little more, got more interested in it, and then learned some songs and kind of stuck with it from there.
That's really interesting. I wonder how many people are players because of that video game. I wonder what the inspiration
Probably
was.
A lot in this generation, in my generation.
Yeah, because for me it was kind of goofy and fun. I remember I was working at group homes at the time, and I would play it with the kids, and it was fun. And I'd always just want to play the bass part because it was challenging, and reaching for the buttons wasn't really my bag. But yeah. I'd play all the bass parts and just kind of jam along with them. And but yeah, a lot of those kids, they were into that. Hours they would play that game.
Well, because you get to play with your friends too, so it's kind of you get that band cohesiveness, but you're playing a video game, and then maybe some people try to bump up to real instruments, and then it falls apart.
Yeah.
or you get good at it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never would have really thought about that being such an inspiration for players.
Yeah, I tried playing Guitar Hero again recently when we took our kids to one of these places, but I couldn't do it. I failed miserably. And I think I was playing Stevie Ray Vaughan, which I can play on the guitar easy now, but I could not play that song on Guitar Hero at all.
Yeah, I took some of my band students to one of the places in Modesto, the go-kart place. I can't remember what it's. Boomers, not Boomers.
Yeah.
Not Boomers.
Funworks.
Funworks.
That's what I was thinking of too.
And yeah, they have a Guitar Hero at Funworks. Yeah. And I tried to play it there too because I had to look at the little $10 card or whatever it was. And yeah, I think I crashed and burned on a Demolition Man. But anyway, yeah. So that's really cool. That's your background with music, and so now you and I originally met at the Irish pub over in Murphy's, and I think the first time I saw you, we didn't really meet. I saw you playing as Us for Love, and I was like, wow, he's doing Dave Matthews tunes, and I was super into it. But I don't think we talked that night. And then eventually we ended up doing The Pub is Dead together.
Yeah.
Which was an Anthony Delaney project where it's the fifth. Is that still how he does it?
Yeah, every fifth Sunday. So every time there's a fifth Sunday, yeah.
Right. And it's just kind of a jam band get together thing. And it was super fun and super cool.
Yeah.
I got to know you and your wife and your cousin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's his name again? Aaron?
Andrew.
Andrew.
Yeah.
That was close. So that's how we met. And you guys are still doing The Pub is Dead, right?
We are, yeah.
And playing out.
Yep.
Doing more gigs away from the pub?
We're kind of moving away from the pub a little bit more. Like we've got booked for quite a few like private parties and trying to get in more places. So that's one thing we discussed was taking it outwards. So now we have a band name called Dead Step now instead of just Pub is Dead because that felt exclusive to the pub and
Sure.
didn't really feel like a band name. You know, at the time it was more of an event. Now we're kind of more formed as a band and because we've gotten so much more tight together after playing for a while and stuff. So.
That's fantastic. I'm glad that you guys were able to transition out of this sort of event thing into a gigging band. And then Us for Love is still doing stuff too, right?
Yeah, all the time. Like we have no free time because we're always playing music.
Hey, it's a good problem to have, man.
Yeah.
So you got any dates coming up you want to tell anyone about?
Yeah, so let's see. So next week, so on the 20th of July, we are at the Press Wine Bar in Tracy.
Okay.
And then we're going to be at Inner Sanctum Cellars.
And that's right up here in Columbia.
Yeah, on the 21st of July.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and then we're booked out till like November, so I could keep going on, but I'm not going to do that.
You guys have a website that has all your shows listed?
Yeah, it's usforlovemusic.com.
Fantastic. And what about Dead Step? Is Dead Step have its own thing yet?
We have an Instagram and Facebook, but we do not have a website at the moment.
But Dead Step, you can like and follow that page on Facebook if you want to know more. Fantastic. All right. Let's take a quick break and we'll go back and start talking about the list. All right. And we're back. We just took another break because it is super hot and I couldn't last another session without a little bit of air conditioning back in this room. All right. So the way this usually works is we just have to take turns talking about our lists, and I usually go first. That way you get the last word. And my list this time is really different than what I've done before. I couldn't pick 10. I just couldn't like do it without just kind of making arbitrary rules. So what I did is I picked a cut from every studio album except for one because there's 11. So there's one that didn't make the cut. But I just picked what I think is the most interesting track from each album. And I think you kind of picked really your favorites. Was that a fair thing to say?
So I did kind of a mix. I kind of liked your approach. I probably should have done that, but I picked a few favorites and then I picked a few songs that I felt kind of represented like the differences that the band can do with their musicality.
That seems like a good approach to make an essential list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I liked mine just because it went through time and there's been changes. They had a band member pass away. They had another band member leave. They've had other people kind of come and go through the years that have really influenced the sound. So I'm going to start with the most recent album. And the cut I picked from the most recent album, which is, Madman's Eyes is the name of the most recent album?
Walk on the Moon, I believe.
Oh, okay. Madman's Eyes is just the main cut.
Yeah.
Right. But my pick from that one is The Only Thing. And this is very specifically because there's a solo section breakdown where they're playing in 4/4 and they get to the solo section and all of a sudden it goes to 10. And it's super cool. But it's super cool this 10/4 thing. And Timmy's just playing this super ripping guitar solo. And it's just rocking out. It's really one of those tunes that's almost more rock than a lot of their previous stuff ever has been.
Yeah.
And I think it's a super interesting one to talk about and to think about. And my favorite cut from that newest album. It didn't resonate super with me. I'd say, in the last 10 years or so, I've been less deep into this band than I have in previous years. I think that, losing, 2/5 of the original members has affected my my appreciation for the band as a whole, and also just for me to have time to go see them live when they get to California these days.
Yeah.
I just don't always have a free weekend to do it. But I do like this new album a bit, and this is certainly my favorite cut from it.
I need to spend more time with this one. I haven't spent much time with the new album very much either. But yeah, I dug all the musical stuff on this album. There's quite a few different approaches they've taken on this one too. It's definitely a different sound.
Yeah, and I think that the lineup for this one is Stefan Carter, Dave, Timmy, Rashawn,
Buddy on keys.
And Buddy on keys. I think that's the lineup right now.
Yeah.
And and that's not necessarily the tradition. Oh, and Jeff's playing saxophone too.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just a change. And I think that for the evolution of the band, it's a fine place for where they are now, but it's not the sound that I'm used to. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I don't appreciate it. It's just not as nostalgic. It doesn't kind of take me back.
Yeah. I was wondering how that was going to play out without Boyd in the band and like missing those strings and like, especially on some crucial songs like Ants or Trippin' Billies and stuff like that, like how they're going to fill all that in.
Have you seen them live?
I've seen a few clips. I haven't went and physically seen them, but I've seen some live stream shows.
Are they still playing those older tunes without strings?
Yeah. And he has like a string synth on his keys.
Okay.
So he kind of fills it in that way. I mean, it's not the same, but
right.
It sounds pretty close enough.
Right. So you still get the essence of the tune, but yeah, that's interesting.
A lot of the times Boyd was out of tune anyways.
Well, yeah. Yeah, Boyd was kind of a wild man on stage and his departure is, certainly surrounded in controversy.
Yeah.
A lot of people can have opinions about it, and I don't particularly want to share mine, but but it nonetheless, it changed the sound of the band, and that's disheartening,
Yeah.
So let's take a look at your number 10, which is Warehouse, and specifically the live version of Warehouse from Central Park.
Yeah. So I chose this one. I mean, as in most of the live ones that I chose or that I resonated with, I felt more of a emotion from Dave in a lot of these performances where he's kind of like just belting or yelling it out. Like, you can totally feel it in the music when he's resonating with that song, specifically that night. That song to me, the crazy guitar intro is like insane. And I don't know how he came up with that. That's one thing with him. I don't understand how he comes up with these things. Like
I think a lot of it, when I've heard other interviews and stuff, a lot of it is just that he grew up in South Africa.
That's what I've kind of chalked it up to. Cause I'm like, there's nobody else is doing stuff like this. Like it's just a so out of the box approach to guitar playing.
Well, it's kind of interesting because Brian and I last week were talking about how Stuart Copeland grew up in Lebanon and heard all this Middle Eastern drumming, and that's why the Police have the unique sound they have. I mean, Sting's a great songwriter, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Sting, but Stuart's drumming comes from having heard all this stuff that American ears aren't on.
Yeah.
So it was new and fresh. And again, I'm not keen on South African music. I haven't spent any real time studying or listening to it, but I wonder how much of what Dave's doing really is pretty commonplace, but it's just fresh for us.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, all the different types of signatures, very percussive guitar parts. And the cool thing is he's not really playing anything like crazy. He's not even playing like actual like full on chords half the time. He's playing like a 1 1/3 most of the time, or like inversions of chords with like 2 notes or 3 notes. And it's just crazy how all those pieces fit in and work together when he's playing. Like it's almost like the band is playing different parts of a keyboard, and they're all coming together to play like a full piece.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, I agree with that. He certainly understands his place in the sonic range of the whole thing, and yeah, I think it's real notable that he's a very percussive acoustic guitar player.
Oh yeah.
So Warehouse is interesting to me because it's off the sort of the first album, the first album after they were signed and got big, which is
Under the Table and Dreaming.
thank you. And it's got three really distinct elements in Warehouse as a song. It's got like the main groove, and then there's kind of this breakdown where Carter just kind of starts playing a cowbell on the quarter notes, just playing that, and it just gets this whole other groove vibe to it. And then at the very end, they have this like call and response, la la la, hey la la, and I think that those are just all really work together well, and it's interesting. Lyrically, this one's never really resonated with me, but you talked a little bit about what it meant for you.
Personally, I just felt like he's talking about mental health, like anxiety. To me, it sounds like anxiety listening to the lyrics, and I think it even represents that in the music with the going back and forth between like really fast paced guitar parts, and then coming to like a chorus or pre-chorus breakdown where it's kind of chill and like you're slowing your breathing and relaxing, like, hey, everything's okay. And then it goes back, spikes up again. And that's kind of I felt like the music was kind of following that emotion as well with the lyrics, which I think is pretty intriguing too.
Sure. And this is really early on in their career. I mean, these guys have been at this for 30 years. This is a band that's been really touring and producing music and has stayed relevant. I mean, they're not as relevant as they back in the heyday, but they're still, doing arenas.
One of the top touring acts.
Yeah.
Selling a bunch of tickets, yeah.
Yeah, they certainly still do well for themselves. And it's just impressive to me that Warehouse is such an early tune. He's still a pretty immature young writer coming up with tunes that are really pretty profound.
That intro is iconic. You can't miss the like, hey,
yeah,
going down, and then
Well, and part of that comes from their policy, their attitude about recording their live shows in the early days. They they were around at the same time as like LimeWire and Napster and all these things, and they're like, hey, live shows are great, but buy the studio albums. They kind of like parlayed, so to speak, with with just their fans saying like, you can trade all the live shows, come record them. Their YouTube libraries a lot, they put almost everything up, or other people do, and there's no retribution for having the live shows out there. So they have all those like live shows on YouTube, and then they started releasing like live tracks where they'd sell CDs of what they kind of thought were their best shows and try to market that. And they sold those like to exclusive Warehouse members. Their sort of club group is called the Warehouse.
We were on that for a bit.
Yeah. It's they've done a really good job with their fandom and relating back with the fans and being reasonably accessible with everybody. And I think that his lyrical choices and rhyme choices and just the themes of his songs, like how he kind of writes songs that have memorable lyrics, but they're a little bit nonsense sometimes, and that they're not telling you a clear story, but they're inspiring you to think about something that like makes your own meaning for it. I think that's why I've always been drawn to him lyrically, is that the lyrics he writes are not telling me what to think. They're just kind of putting ideas out there, and I've got to use my own experience to form that into meaning. Yeah,
that's usually the best songs.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So that puts me at my number 9, which is Virginia in the Rain. I know the art cover.
Come Tomorrow.
Come Tomorrow. That sounds
Come
right.
Tomorrow.
I really like Samurai Cop off this one because they've been playing that song for a lot of years, and they finally decided to do it. Break Free, I think, has also finally got a studio version on this album.
On the newest one.
That's on the newest one?
Yeah. It was Idea of You was on this Come Tomorrow, which is another one they've been playing for a long, long time. Yeah,
so they've had a couple of tunes that they've been playing live for years that just have never made it to a studio album. Blackjack is another one that I wish would get. That's a really good tune, but you can only get it off live albums now.
Yeah.
But Virginia in the Rain, I think, is just a really cool tune. I like what Carter's doing. It's super dynamic. But it's also like this weird nostalgia. Like I know that Dave's family is from Virginia. They're from Charlottesville area and Richmond and that part of the world. But his dad was worked for NASA, I think, and was working in South Africa. So that's where the whole family ended up growing up, was in Johannesburg. So Dave, as a boy, like part of his little kind of accent that he has, which is not super thick, but he does have a bit of an accent. And I think his talking pace and meter comes from spending time with in that part of the world. And certainly his guitar playing comes from having spent so much time in that region.
Oh, yeah.
And as his kids got older and they would go back and spend the beginning part of their tours every year, starting in Virginia, and then they'd head out west as the tour went on. This is kind of what this is about. You know, Virginia, it's really humid. It's still raining there in, you know, late spring, early summer. And, and my younger brother lives out in Virginia now, and I've gone out to visit him a couple times, and you know, I can appreciate what an interesting, special place it is.
Yeah.
You know, that part of the East Coast, you know, Tidewater region is what they call that, you know, and it's an interesting part of the world.
Yeah, I love the Dave piano ballads. We don't get them very often, but they're pretty cool. I like them. They're very smooth. The chords very warm, kind of like what you were describing that to be. The progression of that is really cool. I like the whole vibe of that song.
Yeah, me too. So it's a good listen. So your number 9 is Don't Drink the Water. So this one, I remember they made a music video for this one too, that kind of famously Carter's not in. Did you ever
Is he not?
that?
No, I didn't.
Yep. The video exists and Carter is not in the video, and I don't know why. I've never read the backstory as to why, but Boyd's hanging upside down from like this vine, playing fiddle, and
Dave's swinging on one too.
Yeah, but Carter's not in the video.
Wow,
I don't know why.
Huh.
But aside from that, it's lyrically an interesting tune about imperialism and respect of native cultures, and a disconnect of like spiritual values between the Western world and sort of native worlds. And I think that's really interesting. And he does it in a way that does not really. Well, he's pretty much telling the imperialists are wrong.
Yeah.
Yes. He does make a pretty strong statement about what he thinks of this one.
Yeah, he's definitely saying that Americans took the land from these people and they shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love everything about this song. I mean, just kind of vamping on that one chord for the most part on the verses and utilizing his I would like to say kind of South African like vocals in a way of like the chanting and stuff like that. I love when he brings that to the table with songs too, which I always say when people bring up his vocals not being very good, I'm like, that's some hard stuff to do. Like technically,
yeah,
that's really hard to do vocally. And that's why I was like, he's a good singer. I mean, you can like his voice or not like his voice, but as far as that stuff, like that's hard to do. The breath work, the dynamics of that, like that's hard. He does it on Bartender very well too. Like the intro to Bartender, I'm like, dude, this is so cool. I could just listen to this for a long time. But yeah, and then there's a baritone sax on this too, like the really low baritone. It's just an aggressive song. And then, you know, like most of those songs that are aggressive Dave songs, they kind of come to a resolve, a soft resolve, and then the outro gets pretty aggressive again.
Yeah. I like in the video too how, and I don't know how purposeful any of this was, but they certainly give you the vibe that it was more like South American imperialism. I think you get the vibe that those are, you know, like native Brazilian cultures or something, and not Native American culture, like how they depict it in the music video. And I don't know if that was to like avoid backlash or just kind of say, no, it's not just, you know, America. It's, you know, African culture and South American culture and North American culture and I'm sure Asian culture. You know, I mean, over here we don't hear about it a lot, but I can only imagine how many native cultures still exist in Southeast Asia that aren't touched by technology and modern communications that, you know, are just waiting for someone to come exploit them instead of respect their existence. And, you know, it's tough, you know, when you've got needs of big cultures. It's like, you have something we need and there's more of us.
I think, didn't he deal with that in Africa too when he was growing up? Like, wasn't there kind of like a little war going on? I think I read something about that.
So I don't know enough of history, but I would imagine that apartheid in South Africa,
Yeah.
because he was born in 67 or 69. He's about 10 years older than me, so he's somewhere around that age. So I don't know. I don't know enough of exactly when all that was going on in South Africa, but I would imagine that it was certainly taught in grade school, and he had an idea of it. And
Yeah.
I know a lot of his childhood friends and the people that he associates when he goes back there are black people, South African people that are not the Belgian imperialists,
Yeah.
but the black native people were sort of who he were in his friend group. So I can only imagine that his perspective on all this is unique.
Yeah, he's very well documented being connected to nature and preserving wildlife and, natural resources and all that stuff too. So I'm sure that plays a part in it as well. And Alanis Morissette's on the end of this too.
She is.
She does the background vocals in this song.
Yeah, and then she also does it. She appears on Spoon
Yep.
on this album too, as like almost like a duet. Mm-hmm. All right, so my number 7 is Snow Outside off of whatever album this is. These new ones, I can never remember what they're called. Away from the World is this one.
Yes, you're right.
Yep. And Snow Outside is I wouldn't say is the best cut from this album. It's probably Mercy for me, but I think this one's interesting to talk about very specifically because of Carter's percussion tracking. Like he's got all these little bells, and it's very smartly layered. And for a drummer to go and listen to this track and think about if you're making an album, if you're recording an album on your own, to think about this cut in particular and how much more you could be doing. Like there's a drum set groove and you do your drum set groove, but how much more can you add to the production value of a song with very simple percussion things? And to me, this is a clinic in, a drummer trying to be more creative in the studio by not trying to be flashy and choppy on their drum set part, but instead reaching into interesting sounds and playing them very musically.
Yeah, that fit perfectly too. Like he definitely knows not to overplay and to just like give the song what it needs 100%. All of them really do. They're definitely professionals at that. The delicacy along with the percussion with Dave's guitar and everything is just it ties up really nice.
Yeah, there's one section when he's playing Shaker, and you almost got to listen to it with headphones and really loud. If you just listen to the MP3, it kind of gets lost. But way low, he's got this when it's building up and sort of at its dynamic climax. He's got this. One of Carter's favorite licks is a herta. It's a drum rudiment, and he's playing these kind of fast herta things on shakers, so they're almost lost in there. But it's so cool. In fact, it's the same basic lick that he's playing at the beginning of Drive In, Drive Out. It's that same. He's doing that, but he's doing it with shaker, so it's more hidden and more subtle in this cut. But super cool if you listen to it loud or with good headphones on.
Yeah.
So that's Snow Outside.
I like when he does that too on Loving Wings.
Yeah.
That's another good example of him not overplaying, but like just the perfect percussion over that like delicate guitar part. And then the slow build up to that too. I love that song too.
Yeah, Carter's, it's interesting. I get to talk about almost probably my two favorite drummers back to back is Stuart Copeland and Carter Beauford, where, they're both just incredibly musical drummers.
Oh yeah.
Not just good drummers or choppy drummers or impressive for a lot of other reasons, but super musical. Yeah. So that puts us at your next one, which is Louisiana Bayou.
So this song is a groove. The story is pretty cool. I chose the live version specifically because I like the little jam they go into at the end.
Sure.
That's cool. The newer jam they do with Buddy too. Honestly, I think it's better with hearing that with the keys and stuff like that on that part.
Yeah.
And the new horn section and stuff. Yeah,
there's some good live versions with Robert Randolph
Oh yeah, I
playing
heard that
with
one
these
too.
guys,
Yeah,
too.
that dude's
And-
awesome.
and,
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great live tune. If you go see Dave live and this is a tune that you get that night, you kind of won. This is one of the best things to see live.
Well, that part that Tim plays, just the intro,
Yeah.
is just like craziness. It's yeah, and then Dave with the great rhythm playing there. But yeah, it's all these parts are just. I mean, I'm still amazed at all the parts that go together in all these songs and how they work. It's just I always try to like understand how he's coming up with these, and I just can't.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting song lyrically too about, sort of subculture in America where, a lot of times we associate like negative subculture to like, urban gang kind of stuff. But I think the Cajun, the dark side of Louisiana living is not really known outside of that region, but I think it's real similar in that there's, a lot of messing around with, illegal activities and how much can law enforcement really do and what does it accomplish? If you start incarcerating people and locking them up, it doesn't solve the root problem. And I think that's a sort of an underlying theme of the lyrics here.
Yeah. Do you know if this is based off a true story?
I do not. But I would bet that a story like this happens every month or so down there, which is really sad and unfortunate. This puts us at my next one, which is Squirm. And Squirm comes off of Grugrex King, which is one of my more favorite albums. This is a challenging album because this is the album sort of that Leroy sort of passed away in the middle of producing. They had a bunch of cuts and takes and things, but ultimately Jeff kind of did a lot of the back cleanup on this one. So for me, this is sort of like that the last album when I was really heavily invested in the band.
Yeah,
and Squirm is got another kind of tribal element to it musically, but he's also just kind of talking about the reality of our existence as human beings and how flesh and bone, and we have hands and feet and fingers, and we have everything we need to survive. We don't need other things like power and money and material things in order to survive. And if you strip all that away and we're naked and we're all just standing in a room together, what's really the difference between us?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we have celebrity worship and power differentials and all these other things that culturally we've created and create divisions among us. But, we all take off the clothes and just start standing in a room. There's not a lot of difference.
Yeah. And that's a recurring theme in a lot of his songs. He always wrestles with that, and religion or lack thereof religion, just basically like what we're here for, what we're made for, seems to be a recurring theme in a lot of his songs.
Yeah.
But left vaguely enough to where we kind of leave it up and play with it with our own interpretation of these things.
Yeah. Most of the time he's pretty good at sort of not forcing the message.
Yeah.
I think Don't Drink the Water is kind of an exception to that. I think he's got a pretty clear opinion on that one. But
And in the
Squirm,
music, it's pretty forced too.
Yeah. But Squirm, I think, is just kind of posing a question and having you consider the idea without sort of leading you to a conclusion necessarily, other than that, you're going to die, and it doesn't matter how much money you die with. It just doesn't matter.
It's crazy. Like a lot of the music matches up with the lyrics so well too. Like I feel like the main line to Squirm is kind of like the guitar part feels like it's asking a question almost.
Yeah.
Why, like descending down, you're kind of like unsure of yourself, and that's crazy. Like how a lot of these songs kind of match up like that with the music so well, and the idea he's trying to put forward with the lyrics.
And I think a lot of that comes from to younger listeners of mastery of your instrument. When you have when you're a lyric writer and you've got these interesting ideas and you're able to, through practice, come up with a lyrical idea and then just pick up the guitar and just do it. You don't think about it. You just kind of know where your lyric is, and musically you come up with it. I can't imagine that Dave comes up with a guitar lick and then writes lyrics to it. That just doesn't seem like his process at all. I think he's a super lyrics first guy, and then he just grabs the guitar and fills it out, and he can just do it. He just has been playing so long and has really interesting technique. He's not a soloist. He's not a shredder. He's not
No, yeah.
a lead player. But I think Dave's proficiency on the guitar is way higher than people give him credit for.
Oh yeah, yeah. He pioneered like a whole new generation of acoustic players and how people played. Like, I mean, he was a big influence on John Mayer, who's
Yeah.
now the big influence on my generation of guitar players, and yeah, just like the key changes, the chord choices, like just all these things you weren't used to hearing in like I guess Dave's not pop music, but he had some radio hits.
Sure.
And you don't really hear that with, modern bands that are on the pop radio.
That was Squirm. So that must mean we're at Drive In, Drive Out for you.
Yeah. Now this song, it took me a while to get into it. I wasn't crazy about the vocals. I'm still not crazy about the vocals, but it's another one of those ones where it just feels like it's pure emotion coming out of him. And to me, it's another one of those songs about anxiety. And again, the music kind of matches the tone of what he's talking about and how it builds up and then kind of slows down. It almost feels like breath work. A lot of these songs about anxiety feel like breath work.
If I remember the story correctly, I think this was the song that he wrote because he was being pressured to write more songs. They were under contract. They did the first three record deal. So Under the Table and Demon, Crash, which is this one.
Yeah.
And then what turned out to be Before These Crowded Streets. And I think in the process, he had a bunch of tunes that kind of kept getting axed from Crash. And Drive In, Drive Out was sort of him kind of like, well, yeah, I'm not just a monkey who can write these things like on demand. And I think Drive In, Drive Out was kind of his response of being frustrated at the process of producing material under pressure.
Yeah.
So your association to anxiety would make a lot of sense. It might have been a different cut on that album, but I remember that there's a story about a cut. It might have been, I have no lid upon my head, but if I did, whatever that song that is, that might have been that song instead. But I think it was Drive In, Drive Out.
Yeah. And then I mainly picked this one because of the Carter, the drums at the end and everything. It's just, yeah.
Again, this is so just like we're talking about Snow Outside. This is a much more clear, definitive version of him playing those Herta licks. And it really is. It's his bread and butter. He really likes this lick. A lot of his solos when he takes them in Bartender and things like that, he really digs into this particular rudiment style. And they sound great. He's really a master of it.
Yeah.
He even does them between like the snare drum and then the cymbal, a crash or a china up on his right and then the other china up on his left. So visually it looks really cool too. It's not just a symmetrical one E and O, but and he's got his arms flailing and it sounds cool, but it's visually really cool looking too.
Well, he's hitting like the hi-hat and then the ride at the same time, and it's. I mean, I'm not a drummer, but it's the way he moves around is just crazy.
So Carter's a super interesting guy because he's one of the best drummers of a generation, really. But he's interesting because he's a lefty. He's a left-handed individual who, and his whole family was pretty musical. And his dad left him with a drum set and was watching old tapes or videos, or I don't know, he might even be too old for videos, but somehow he was watching Buddy Rich. And he mirrored everything because he didn't understand it. So he set his drum set up like a lefty would because it was inverse mirrored of how Buddy did. So Carter learned to play with his hi-hat on his right side and bass drum with his left foot and everything descending. And then as he did more gigs and kind of had to like use backline kits and didn't want to have to, invert everything, he ended up crossing his feet. So now he uses his left hand on the hi-hat and right foot on the bass drum, but he keeps his ride cymbal on the left, not on the right like most drummers would. And then he plays open-handed and his hi-hat's on his left, but he plays it with his left hand. Most drummers cross and use their right hand on the hi-hat and left hand on the snare drum. So he has this really open drumming style. And what that's allowed him to do is he still can like left-hand lead with his toms because there's no hands in the way. So anyway, it's just, there's not a lot of other guys that really have this open style. except for like Billy Cobham, who's mostly a jazz guy. And Billy Cobham, without much of a surprise, is one of Carter's heroes.
They were all like jazz musicians, right? Before they formed this band. Well, besides Dave.
Well, so the backstory to that is Leroy and Carter used to play at the UVA, University of Virginia in Charlottesville. Used to have a jazz night, very much like the pub, on either Wednesday or Thursday nights at this place called Miller's downtown on the college walk in Charlottesville. And Dave was a bartender. His dad had passed away, and his mom had moved the whole family back to Virginia from South Africa. And his day job, or night job, was as a bartender at this place, Miller's. And he'd made some demo tapes and shared it with Carter and Leroy, who were playing jazz. And I guess this is probably an interesting time to tell another story for me about how I met somebody. So I had found out, I don't remember which night it was either Wednesday or Thursday night, and John DeEarth is now the professor of music, or at the time he was a professor of music at UVA. And John is a trumpet player that played with Bruce Hornsby in The Range. If you're familiar with Bruce Hornsby at all. But he was the trumpet player for that band and just kind of knew everybody. And he was also the link of how Stefan Lessard got hooked into the Dave Matthews Band. He was kind of who introduced the original three, which is Leroy, Carter, and Dave, to Stefan. And then Boyd got brought in because he was neighbors, like across the street or next door to Carter. And that's how but they're all Charlottesville, Charlottesville, Virginia band. And so I went and sat in and played. They had this great jazz group, and I asked if I could play with them, and they let me play a couple tunes, and I got to meet this guy, John DeEarth. And I was there with my younger brother, and he said, wouldn't it be really cool if one of those guys just came by? And I'm like, no, they're not going to come by. Like, they're not going to come to Miller's. And so we finished our drinks and burgers, and the very next day we decided to go to Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, which is, I don't know, it's a drive away, probably 2 or 3 hours from Charlottesville back down to Williamsburg. And so we go, and I'm not thinking anything of it. And I'm at the park, and my niece and my brother and his fiance are riding this ride called Verbolten at Busch Gardens. And it was brand new at the time. It had just come out. And it was a magnetic acceleration roller coaster, really, really cutting edge technology for whatever year this was. And I'm standing there, and the line stopped. The ride's broke. They're running carts without any people on it, and I'm just kind of standing there. And this guy next to me that I didn't really pay a lot of attention to looks over at me and kind of wryly says, "Verbroken." And I look over and I realize I'm standing next to Carter Beauford. No, wow! I'm just standing at a thing, and I'm like, "Wow, you're one of my heroes." He's like, well, I'm just, and I ended up spending a lot of the afternoon with the guy, like just kind of talking and hanging out. And
that's cool.
He was with his family at the park, and I was with my brother at the park. And so that's the individual from the band I've met and really spent some time with. And what a gracious human being to just let me be a fanboy and not make me feel awkward about it, But he was just there with his family hanging out. And it was super awesome. Cool. Yeah. So that's how I met Carter.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm assuming that's the one you would probably want to meet the most too, right?
Probably, yeah. Of all the ones I could have spent any significant amount of time with, that's the one I did. And it was a great day, good memory.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, in my story, I forgot. We're talking about Drive In, Drive Out, and what a great tune that was. Anything more to add on the cut, besides my story?
I don't think so. I think we highlighted all the points I kind of wanted to get to there.
All right. So that puts me at Busted Stuff. And not really, because now everyone gets to know the album I skipped, which is American Baby. I just... The thing about American Baby is I like a lot of the tunes on the album, but I don't like that album. I think it's from a production point of view, it's just not my favorite to listen to. Now, from the live stuff, like cuts from that album from live recordings, I like a lot of those songs. I don't think the material's bad. I just think that the direction they went in production is not my cup of tea. So that's why I left it off. That's the one I skipped.
Yeah.
So now I'm back to Busted Stuff. And I think the most interesting cut on this one is You Never Know. for just a lot of reasons. I think rhythmically, this is just all over the place. These guys,
Yeah, I can't play this one.
yeah. I mean, it's so hard to figure out, and even if you had a chart, it would be so difficult to follow. And I don't know. But I also think the question of, what if God wandered by one day? What if we're just living our lives, doing our thing, and he's here, like watching us, observing us, judging, maybe not judging, just seeing. And, what does that mean? And what's the purpose of our existence? And it's another one of those questions, kind of like Squirm, where he's having us consider sort of more spiritual things about our existence.
Yeah.
And I think it's musically very complex, and I think it's an interesting thing to consider and think about, spend some time thinking about.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's real things that I struggle with, like I always, me and my wife always say, like, we don't want to give up music for anything, like no matter what gets in the way or whatever, like our jobs or whatever. So we always try to make our passion work, because that's what we feel we're here for, is to, play music and create music. And, yeah, it's a constant struggle mentally to, ask yourself what your purpose is and stay on the positive path and,
Sure. And
wonder what's up there and around you.
And your wife is your bandmate too.
She is, yeah.
And in both bands, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's got to be also a struggle, because you guys have a family. You've got kids. Mm-hmm. So both of you trying to balance day jobs, and steady income, and gigging, and both of you are gigging together.
Yeah.
You can't like leave one home and one not and have a family. I bet that's really is a struggle for you guys. I'm glad you're able to balance it out.
Yeah. And the positive is that, I mean, it's made us really tight together as a relationship, and like family and everything that we do play together, because we're working together, we're doing our passion together. But as in being in a band, there's relationships. You kind of have to problem solve with other people and work through stuff. So we get that experience too, just in ways, between being in a relationship and being in band members and working together. Although we do not get along when we write songs. We always argue, but we have two different distinct styles, and they mesh together, and usually it comes out for the better after the argument.
Yeah. Well, it's negotiation in relationships, and especially the creative process.
Yeah.
It's tough to be creative with another person about anything.
Be vulnerable. That's the hardest part, is being vulnerable. And like, I mean, I know it is for me, 'cause it's like, hey, I just came up with this thing. Do you want to hear it? Like, and I don't want to play it, but because I'm like, I know this is bad. But she's like, no, just continue doing it. Yeah, there's been a few songs where I've come up with some stuff, and I'm just like, I'm not going to play that again. She's like, no, you need to work on that and play it. So, yeah, we do that to each other.
That's good. It's good to be a supportive person in the household that doesn't let you give up on an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I wonder how many musicians come up with something that, that's no good. And if you just flushed it out for another couple hours, it would have been a hit, So that was You Never Know for me. That puts us at 7 for you.
Yeah.
What a naughty little song.
So this song, I specifically chose this one because this one has given me such a pain every time I've tried to learn it and play it on the guitar because of the time signature. Yeah. And to sing it and play at the same time, my brain just overheats and I just can't do it. I'm just like, dude, this is, I can't get this song down.
Yeah, so this is another one where there's 3 time signature changes. The intro is in 4, doon, 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 and then it gets to the first verse and it's in 7. Mm-hmm. And then red is the color of and then that's in 10. Yeah. And so yeah, you really got to be on your counting game to get through this tune.
Yeah, it seems so effortlessly too. That's another thing I wonder, like, do they like consciously make these choices, or is it just kind of like a feeling thing?
I don't know. I'd love to know what Dave's process is. I'd like to see him write a song, like just get out of bed and do his thing and pick up a guitar and go, oh, that's one.
Yeah. I think if I had to make a guess, it would probably just be a feeling thing, because he's kind of got like that natural odd rhythm from being South African. I think it just kind of flows naturally to play the unnatural things we hear usually in mainstream. music.
Yeah.
So
And this is one of the last songs that Leroy was around to flesh out.
was he on this one?
I don't know that he played on the record, but I know that all these tunes were developed before he passed away. And then
Yeah, because he opens the record and closes it, right?
Right.
His like saxophone. Yeah.
Yeah, that little. And I think some of them. I think that like, is it Spaceman?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's playing Spaceman without. I think that's not Jeff. I think that's all Leroy on that particular cut. But there's bits and pieces that he had recorded. Or they had stuff from outside the studio because they recorded this one in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember how the time frame was because they were on tour when he ended up passing away because he had, sadly had an ATV accident.
Yeah.
They were on tour and he had gone home to spend some time with his mother and his fiance and was out fixing a fence, I think is what the story was. Like there was a fence that needed some repair and he took the four-wheeler out with all the materials and rolled it and ended up puncturing a lung. And
That's crazy.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like something that would end you. Like even for what it was,
like
it
a
just
freak
was
accident.
Really unfortunate thing. And in a lot of ways, Carter and Dave have both said that Leroy was kind of the glue. And I think that the band's future when he passed away was really shaky. I don't know if those guys really wanted to do it without him.
Yeah.
It was a tough thing for them. But anyway, Seven, I know he was part of the development of a lot of these tunes, and they were playing them live the season before they recorded it. Seven was a really good opener the couple of times that I'd seen them. That's what the show they'd open with. And they used to have this really cool effect where they had this white curtain that like had rips in it kind of thing. And then, doon, 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 and the intro would start. And as soon as the verse would start, this curtain would get sucked up by like some vacuums or something. It would pull up instead of fall. It was a really cool effect. And that's how they opened a number of shows I saw that year.
Yeah, and the lyrics are just,
Yeah, it's a naughty little tune.
like cornbread.
Yeah, like cornbread or say goodbye.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit of naughtiness to it. So the next tune for me is Fool to Think, which is off of the Everyday album. This is another one that I was not, it's probably my second least favorite album behind American Baby. It also took a direction that was a little bit more pop for me. And I say the same thing. Like, seeing those songs played live is fine. But this particular album and the way it was produced was, not as interesting to me. And I think Fool to Think was a tune, like, I know which girl in my life that song's about, like, specifically. I remember, being single and kind of thinking that there was much more there, and I wasn't hep to the friend zone thing yet, like, oh, that's what's happening. And that's kind of what the song's about, is, when a guy's really, really got some strong feelings and probably doesn't see the friend zone coming.
Overthinking things. And and it's one of those instances where the guitar part kind of mirrors the lyrics. Like, you got that fast moving guitar part with the like little triads, like do-do-dun, do-do-dun, do-do-dun. That seems like it's kind of like his heart rate going, or, with the lyrics, or him just like his thoughts going a million miles per hour and then slowing down. And
there is a good juxtaposition of pace between the verse and the chorus. Where he relaxes and like when he starts to be reflective versus when he's being anxious.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Dave's really an anxious guy. He seems like he's pretty mellow a lot. But so many of his songs like have this anxious component.
Yeah.
I bet he struggles.
Oh yeah. I mean, as we all do. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very human thing to struggle with. I mean, that's personally a lot that I talk about, and a lot of stuff I write too but I'm always amazed at how well he can get the music to match the lyrics in those senses of how the band speeds up, slows down, gets louder, just the dynamics of everything overall, all building up to that lyrical idea and kind of resolving it is super awesome.
Yeah.
And that album's probably like, I think I've listened to that one the least amount. Besides, no, I think I've listened to that one less than American Baby. I think.
Yeah, they're both a little bit just too poppy. They don't represent what the Dave Matthews Band is live. I think is a fair way to say it.
Yeah.
And I think that the songs off those two albums live are fine. Those guys execute those tunes in a way that's like, oh, this is much more interesting.
Yeah.
And I just think that I think the producers were trying to get something out of these guys that wasn't really what they were really all about. Mm-hmm. So let's move on to your next cut, which is off of American Baby, but not this version. You picked a live version.
Yeah. So I really love the Dave and Tim stuff.
Yeah.
And it's such a unique sound compared to the band too. It's a very different. I think a lot of the songs sound very different in the approach too. I personally, I'm coming around to it, but when I first started listening to them, I didn't like what Tim was doing with the band, like his playing. I didn't really care for it. But when it came to like his acoustic playing with just Dave, I thought everything was like super cool and it fit perfectly. And I don't know, that's just something that I kind of still think a little bit. It's gotten better for me, and I don't think he's playing much different things. I think it's just like the space that needs to be filled with, and it's just an acoustic, and then the parts that Tim plays fit perfectly with just the two of them. Like playing off of Dave's vocals. He does a lot of lines that play off of Dave's vocals or harmonizes with Dave's vocals.
Yeah.
Just really, really cool, intricate stuff that he does.
Well, and David plays pretty differently too. We haven't actually said what song we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're talking about Old Dirt Hill.
Yeah.
Is the tune we're talking about, and specifically from the Radio City Music Hall gig with just him and Tim. The first time I'd heard this variation was the Live at Luther College album that they did just as an acoustic duo. And I think Dave plays differently too when it's just him and Tim. He digs in more and starts covering some of those drum parts. He's even more rhythmic when he's playing with Tim, and lets Tim really kind of help cover the, all the sustained parts and the sax solos and Tim's just a monster player.
Oh yeah.
And guitar players, if you're looking for someone who's probably not on your radar to kind of spend some time studying, Tim Reynolds is certainly worth an afternoon of just kind of going, oh wow, that guy's. Yeah,
I always listen to the Dave and Tim records too. Like they're so good.
I even like the TR3 stuff. Tim has his own band, a little trio, and it's not. I wouldn't say it's everyone's cup of tea, but if you're like a power trio, jazz fusion kind of, if that's something you're interested in, give TR3 a listen. I think you'd get a lot out of those guys.
I'm amazed at some of the sounds he gets out of like the guitar too, with like the pedals. So that's a big reason why when my band, when we were trying to like form our sound and find out what we were going to do, because we're a trio as well. So my wife plays a cajon and I play guitar and my cousin plays guitar. We're trying to figure out how to make that sound full and big with just three of us.
Right.
And that was a big inspiration for us, was Tim Reynolds playing, because he was using an electric rig on an acoustic guitar.
Right.
And I was like, wow, that's not done. I mean, people do it, but it's not done very often. So we started doing that, and it filled so much of the spaces that needed to be filled with just, like reverb pedals or a little bit of drive, like all that stuff just fills the bottom end so much when you're just playing with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah, it helps make up for not having a bass player.
Yeah.
Sonically, just to hear every instrument kind of be a little bit more trebly is not always pleasing. You want that bass, which, drums and bass guitar usually fill out for a band, and you guys have neither. So it's cool that you're experimenting with pedals and sounds to kind of round out that sound and give it a complete sonic pyramid.
Yeah, and Dave on this one plays a lot of those same like 2-note chords, and Tim fills in a lot of the lower end, and then he goes high, and then he's just all over the place, but it flows so seamlessly and fits so perfectly over the song. And the song lyrical idea is, just nostalgic and wanting to be a kid again, and I mean, we can all relate to that. Easier times and...
Yeah, and a little bit of mischief, too. Like not bad mischief, but, we're going to go down to the bridge and smoke some cigarettes and hang out. And, and that's kind of how I remember my, high school years being more. I don't know, how much it is a generation behind me if that
Yeah.
kind of naughtiness and mischief is still the way it is.
It's always there.
Well, it's good to know that it does transcend to someone who's a
Yeah.
little bit younger, and Dave, who's 10 years older than me, writing it. So, it's a pretty good gap. And then we get to the only crossover on our list, and they're in the exact same spot, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So it's The Stone from Before These Crowded Streets. And this is, I don't know, this is might be the opus for me. I definitely think if you're going to make a list, that the first auto include on a list for Dave Matthews is probably Ants.
Yeah.
But The Stone is so interesting musically, so interesting in the production value on Before These Crowded Streets, and interesting from how he developed the idea to write this song. Like to put himself, to write it from the perspective of Jesus and the angst of the decisions in his life, without it being a song that's like a Christian worship. It has nothing to do with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with Christianity or belief. It's just do you know the story? Let me tell you, let's think about if you were him and what that would actually feel like in a real human way. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's a really smart idea for a song, and it's executed really, really well.
Yeah. This is personally probably my favorite song of theirs, from the music to the lyrics. Yeah, the chorus, the nice chorus, and then the build up again. It's another one of those that just flow really well with the lyrics. And to this one, I can relate it to anxiety as well with this one.
Sure.
Some of the lyrics, but this song is super cool.
On the studio version of this one too, there's a bunch of additional string work where they've got cellos and like a full string symphony or small.
There's kind of a call to that Elvis tune, right? They play it live, but I don't know if they had it on the original track too.
Yeah, this one
There's like a little tease to it.
Yeah, it comes into I Can't Help Falling in
Yeah.
Love with You.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they do that live quite a bit, and that's an interesting choice as a medley to this song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave doesn't talk about religion. He does a number of tunes which certainly have religious thoughts and components.
Yeah,
and
kind of just
things,
dipping his toe in it,
but I've never felt like he's been associated to me personally as being a Christian artist or talking about it outside of the lyrics of his songs. It's like there's no push or agenda to that, but it's certainly a theme that has infiltrated a number of his songs.
Yeah, Bartender, the Christmas song.
The Christmas song, right? Bartender does. Yeah, those are good examples. Big Eyed Fish, even to some degree, Yeah. So, like I said, you're also the Stone at this spot. So that makes me go back to the Crash album, and I chose "Say Goodbye." Another one of the sort of the naughty little songs of hey, I know you've got a boyfriend, but he's not here right now, and I am, so it's Dave being that naughty Dave, and this younger version of himself. All the old stories is Dave got around a bit. You hear the old stories, and good for him.
Lustful young man.
Yeah, if you're gonna be a rock star, you might as well do it right. But for me, the real selling point again is this song is a one take, but two different cuts out of 41 on Crash.
Yeah.
So they recorded 41 and then they seamlessly go into this, and it's tracked as two different songs on the album, but it was all done in one take. And Carter's just a wild man on this. The drum intro to this is mind-blowingly good. He's playing with what we call like root sticks, so they're like a whole bunch of like really low gauge dowels, and so you get this like they're not quite brushes, but they're not quite sticks, and he's just blazingly fast.
This is his song to shine on.
Yeah,
that and the flute,
and then the flute, and like I was saying earlier, Leroy, who's really known as a saxophone player, but I think that the best solos of the entire Dave Matthews discography are two of his flute solos, and this is one of them. I think that
Yeah.
the flute intro to this is every bit as interesting to me as any of the sax solos ever were. And then there's one more flute solo that I want to discuss later that I think is phenomenal. But Say Goodbye, it's interesting and it's fun. It's a little tongue in cheek. The lyrics are interesting. It's kind of famously one of those tunes that Dave never would remember the lyrics to when they would do it live. The lyrics were never the same. He just kind of made them up as he went along, kind of thing.
It's a very African groove too.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a fun tune. And for those other musical elements, it's why it made my list. So I think that puts us at your...
Yeah, Come Tomorrow, That Girl Is You.
Yeah. So we talked before, and this is one of those ones that I don't have a lot of affinity for. It might be because it's one of those off that newer album and I just haven't spent as much time with it. I recognize that what he's doing vocally, like his range and the straining is really impressive. But as a tune, it hasn't grown on me. But I'd like to hear why it's so high for you.
I really like the groove to it. The simplistic approach to just, I think it's 3 chords, the entire song. And they're really not even chords. He's just playing kind of like a root and a third to most of these. But you got that low drum from Carter just holding it down and then a slow build up. And it's just he's just confessing his love for this girl. And I think that's why I like it a lot. I love songs, but, just the pure emotion that comes out of it. It may be too much for a lot of people because he's not exactly the greatest pitch in this song, or he's not even searching for it. Doesn't feel like it. Like he's just pure expression and kind of like screaming it out there, letting them have it that he loves this person, that changed his world. So I enjoy watching that happen, like when they're performing it live and seeing how much he gets into it. And then they also bring out a New Orleans jazz band sometimes with them too, and do like a big finish with a bunch of horns section and stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah. I think that would really put it over the top for me because I haven't been to a live show in years. And I think this song would be really hip with like a New Orleans street band, a sousaphone and...
Oh yeah, it's
that would be pretty hip.
Because there's so much empty space in the song. Like,
right.
I mean, you can use it. So like we've set in with Dave Rogers and his drum circles. Like I've played this over some drum circles when I've taken my guitar and I've played the guitar part to this, and it's just so easy for the drums to kind of just like find a place in there and build it up. It's a really cool like drum circle type song too because there's so much space in there. But this is one of the highlights of that album for me personally, even though I can see why people don't resonate with it that much.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do appreciate all those elements about it, but I think for me as a drummer, it's kind of I'm more drawn to Carter doing things that I guess are more impressive sounding. And not to say this isn't impressive. There's certainly an element of maturity to playing a tribal groove and keeping it high energy for the whole tune. And that is happening here. So I don't want to diminish, even though this is not difficult, it is interesting. So I probably would need to sit with this a little bit more to get a higher appreciation. But I don't think it's a bad tune. I don't think they have a bad tune. But
I don't either. I've experimented playing this live too.
Okay.
And it's hard to hit some of those notes, but
I bet
I go for it too. And people seem to like it. Like they don't know that it's Dave Matthews a lot of the time, but they're like, "What's that song?" And I'm like, "What's the Dave Matthews song?" And I'm like, "I haven't heard that one." So I mean, it's kind of like an upbeat groove that people kind of turn their heads and like, "Oh, that's a cool beat." It's so it's one of those. So yeah, we've played it for quite a few years now. It's kind of fallen out of our rotation a bit, but. Because it's kind of hard vocally.
Yeah. All right, so that puts us at my number 2, which is Typical Situation off of Under the Table and Dreaming. And I alluded to it a minute ago. This is the flute solo. I think that this is for me, the absolute highlight of Leroy's recorded career with the band is this flute solo. And I know that a lot of people, have other favorite things, and a lot of his sax stuff is phenomenal. I mean, he did so much that was phenomenal. But as the phrasing of what he's doing in the very, as soon as he comes in with this, and I can't even vocalize it to give it justice, but the way he comes in with the flute for the solo is so perfect for me that it's just like, and then the tune's just driving behind it. It starts out real mellow, and he's doing sort of a king is, the King of Pain comparison. Seven Oceans Fumble. He's just doing this countdown of things to sort of consider, and then it goes into it, and then kind of a wry comparison of the pressure of us to sort of conform and be like everyone else, and maybe you shouldn't, but maybe it's dangerous if you don't.
Yeah.
I think all these thoughts kind of get put out there, and I think in a political climate like we are here, an election year in 2024, this resonates with me. I'm a musician. I consort with all sorts of folk, who have strong opinions one way and the other. And to me, this song, every time I hear it, I just really resonate with how people are feeling, the polarization and, I believe this, so if the people who don't believe this are bad and wrong.
Yeah.
And how kind of dangerous that is, but then the danger of not conforming, and just, it's interesting. And I just, all I can try to say is to, engage with everything responsibly. And, ignorance is not an answer.
Yeah. I mean, being a musician, you're kind of approached with a lot of mixed feelings about, wanting to follow your passion and putting certain things aside, or putting that as a priority. And, a lot of the times people want you to kind of fall in line and just go get a 9-to-5, man. Like do what everyone else is doing. And it's like, well, I don't want to do that. Like,
right.
So it's like the lyrics say, why are you different? Why are you that way? Sometimes it's, you feel like you have to ask yourself that question, and that's how people look at you sometimes when, you're making these choices for yourself or sacrifices to go do what you're passionate about. And
yeah. And a lot of people, even people who care about you don't get it. They don't understand the decisions that we as artists and musicians, but anyone who's really doing art, kind of have to make some, what would be dubious decision making by someone who, went to college, got their 4-year degree, works their 9-to-5, makes a nice, healthy, safe, comfortable living. A lot of the decisions that we make are just like, you're going to drive all the way over there for $200.
Yeah.
Well, I could stay home and watch Friends. Like what else am I going to do on Saturday? This is what I do. And I can see where sometimes those things don't line up.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really relevant song. Again, it's off of what a lot of people consider was the first album, Under the Table and Dreaming.
Yeah.
And I think he had really good insight into the human condition way back then. And musically, I think that this is as good, if not better than some of the later stuff from a musical arranging point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the spaciness of the beginning, and there's a lot of openness in the song for a lot of parts to fill in, and definitely the flute is a highlight in this for sure.
I feel like somehow we skipped one of your songs.
Did we?
We did That Girl Is You, which was your number 2, and we just did.
Oh, you know what we skipped?
What did we skip?
Ants.
Oh,
we skipped Ants.
We did, way back.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so we've screwed up the order because I'm not going to edit this back. But we did. And so Ants should have been number 10, 9, 8 for you.
Yeah.
All right. So, for those of you keeping track, because I'm sure you all are, Ants should have been number 8 and everything else should be shifted up one. So tell me about Ants.
That's most people's first song with Dave, right? Like hearing that first. That's in our rotation when we play out gigs all the time. Like that's That's the first Dave tune I played to gauge people's interest. I'm like, is there any Dave fans here? Because if there is, I'm going to play some more songs.
Right.
If not, then I'll tone it down to maybe 2 songs or 3. But yeah, that song's just fun, man. It's so unorthodox to start with just a snare hit, like
Yeah.
just openness. I mean, the whole verse is like 2 chords, but like just all the parts together, the sax, the fiddle. I mean, all of that part, all of those are fun. The jam parts that trade off between the saxophone and the fiddle and
And then the live version. I mean, they really jammed this one out too.
oh yeah,
This is their anthem and was the first real hit. Was the off that first album. This is the first one I saw too. This was coming home probably my junior year of high school, and coming in and turning on VH1, and I saw the video. And once I saw Carter blow bubbles with bubblegum while he was playing this not easy groove, I was like, wow, this is probably some guy I need to pay attention to.
yeah.
And, probably a year or 2 later, I was basically following them around.
Yeah, the live groove on that too, where they kind of like stop and then like the fiddle goes and then they hit again and then the sax goes.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. The trade-off stuff is so cool. Or they'll do it sometimes where they'll hit once, then let the four bars go by, and then they'll do twice,
Right.
2 hits,
Like a
and then
countdown.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we do that too when we play it because it's so much fun. It keeps people on their toes, and it's a lot of fun.
And for the first introduction too, I think that the first thing you hear is that snare drum, but the next thing you really hear is the violin, the fiddle part, and it's like, whoa, what am I hearing? Like I'm hearing this on rock radio.
Yeah,
I'm hearing it like it was really sounds you didn't expect to hear. For the time, I mean, these guys were kind of coming out, with music the same time as like Chili Peppers and Primus and Nirvana.
Yeah.
This is the contemporaries of the time.
It's like an age of
1995.
guitar heroes at that time, and then you have a band that's led by saxophone and fiddle and an acoustic guitar player instead of an electric.
Yeah. And Tim, I think, played with them live still early on, and then he took a break, and and then kind of came back. But yeah, it's certainly an unorthodox lineup.
That build up on the song too, like going up to the saxophone solo, like gets me every time. Like that saxophone solo and the drum roll up to it is just is perfection, man. It's awesome.
And the little rap
Yeah.
that he does in there too. It's just
the
a quirky
nonsensical talking he does. Yeah.
All right, so my number 1 off of the actual first album, which is Remember Two Things, I picked Minarets because I think that from a compositional musical point of view, this song is mind-blowingly advanced for as young of a band as this was. It doesn't. I mean, they play it live, but it's not a real popular. It's not in the rotation. You might get it once or twice a summer, and maybe even not for a couple of years before they make a reappearance. But man, everyone's just on their game. This is such a good recording.
Yeah.
It's such a good song. And because it's on sort of an album that isn't necessarily considered a real album by some people, I think a lot of people miss it and don't know that this was there. And I think this is just phenomenal. It's a real Middle Eastern kind of groove. The minarets are, they're talking about the towers of a mosque. Those are the minarets. And so it's got a real Middle Eastern vibe and theme and lyrical composition.
Yeah, because I didn't know the lyrical story behind this one. So
yeah. And then at the end it kind of goes into this double bass drum, double time, and then just sort of resolves. I don't know. I love this tune. It's probably one of my favorite tunes, and not a very popular cut. I don't think. I don't know a lot of my contemporary Dave Matthews fans who hold this in high regard as I do.
It's a very distinct sound too. Like it's one of those that you don't hear something that sounds like that. And he's got a few that have that flavor, that Middle Eastern flavor, like we were talking about earlier. And he even put a new one on the new record with Madman's Eyes, and all those songs are really good. Like when he does that type of that vibe, it's so unique, and it's It's really cool to see how the rest of the band revolves around like a part like that, but try to make it more modern and more rock instead of like traditional Middle Eastern style.
Right.
So yeah, but yeah, this song is, I still can't play this song guitar either.
Yeah, this is a tricky composition. All right, and then we're finally at your number one tune, which if I was making a real list where didn't have all these rules, this would certainly be on my list too.
Yeah, number 41.
What an interesting song title. Do you know like how some of the numbers got to be song titles?
Wasn't it because he didn't have it was just because he didn't have a name for it?
Yeah,
or?
he had a book and he just
Yeah, he
numbered
did.
the tunes. So he couldn't decide. So there's a number of his tunes that are just numbered. They're just the number in his book.
Right, yeah. That's funny. And then this tends to be a fan favorite. Yeah, the chords on this one are hard to play too. Like there's a lot of long stretches for your hands. Mm-hmm. But it's not a hard tune to really play. It's just some of the chords are hard. But I love the vocal melody. I love the build up of the song. Yeah, it's one of those that I found myself singing all the time.
Yeah, from a drumming perspective, this is one of those tunes that really is almost impossible to do if you don't have your drum set set up like how Carter does, because he's doing like rhythms between his hi-hat and his right
A lot
cymbal.
of hi-hat work, yeah.
And if you had to reach across with your right hand to your right cymbal and still be hitting your snare drum, which is like the groove doesn't really work, like the pattern and the sticking doesn't work if you don't have everything like sort of left side shifted. So I find that interesting about this tune, that this is a really tricky tune to cover if you don't set the drums up sort of correctly.
And it doesn't seem like it would be a hard tune to play either. It's just there's a lot of small intricacies in the song that make it, unique. My personal highlight for this song usually is when they play it live, there's usually a play off between the drums and the sax at the end in the jam section. I always love Carter going back and forth between Leroy or Jeff, whoever's playing the sax. And Jeff, this is a highlight one for Jeff for me.
Yeah.
He kind of goes nuts on the saxophone on this one usually.
Yeah, this is one of the ones that he often will do the double sax thing. You ever seen him do that, where he'll grab a tenor and an alto, put them both in his mouth at the same time, and just start playing chords with two horns? And that's nuts. Jeff's a wild man.
The saxophone, like, and this one he has it screaming.
Yeah.
A lot of the times. But yeah, the play off between Carter and the sax is really cool. Just Carter will do a drum roll and then he'll do and then yeah, I love that type of stuff as a musician, like just the play off and them just having fun, and the openness of that is really cool.
Carter, he released a drumming DVD years ago called Under the Table and Drumming.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And he's talking about 41 specifically, his approach to drumming and how much he relates the outro section to the Police. He's very much trying to play that bump bump. I can't sing it, but there's an outro to 41 where it's kind of almost reggae-ish, and he's really trying to emulate Stuart Copeland on that outro, and he talks about that in depth on that drumming video that he did. And it's really cool, and it's cool to see that Carter is impressed by a lot of the same contemporaries that I was impressed with, apart from him. Stuart Copeland and anyway, anything else to say about 41?
No, I got to see this one. So I got to see Dave once. I need to see him more.
Okay.
But we got to see him once in 2017. So it was right before Boyd left the band.
Okay.
But yeah, they played this song. This was one of my highlights of the night. And we got Watchtower too that night.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a good one to get.
Yeah, I was in heaven.
There used to be a website that you could you'd make an account and you'd list all the shows you went to, and then it would tabulate every song that's on those different sets and kind of give you a rarity score, because some of these tunes they've never played, like Mother Father, I don't think has ever been played live.
Santana's on that one, isn't he? As a guitar player?
On Mother Father?
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think he's playing lead guitar on that.
I don't know.
I could be mistaken, but or he's played it with them for sure.
Okay.
But Yeah, I think he's on that record as the guitar player for that. Because it's kind of like a Spanish vibe.
No, I think you're thinking of a different tune.
Are you sure? No, it's Mother Father.
Let's pause and listen. So unsurprisingly, I'm wrong and Tyler's right. I was thinking of Dreams of Our Fathers, not Mother Father.
Yeah.
And that's the tune that I've the story I heard about that is they've sound checked it a couple different times, and Dave gets frustrated trying to play it and sing at the same time, and they just never have done it live. But Mother Father, you're right. It's got that like acoustic guitar, and I think that is Santana playing on it.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
Yeah, I looked it up. It is him. And I think Dave's done a song with him too on one of his records.
Yeah, off of Supernatural, they did Love of My Life.
Yeah.
And Carter's playing drums on that cut too.
Oh.
Yeah, it's Carter and Dave with Santana.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's our list for now. We're going to do some negotiation, and we usually do this off mic because I don't want, our guests to hear us argue. So we're going to come back and tell you what we sort of negotiated to be the final essential Dave Matthews list. Stay tuned. All right, and we have a list, and as sort of tradition, we're just breaking all kinds of rules. We decided that there's 3 tunes that neither of us brought up that actually belong, because I made a list that had like sort of weird rules that I wanted to talk about tunes for the sake of talking about them that didn't necessarily have to do with what I think would be on the essential list. And that's probably why we have some weird outliers. So our final list is number 1, Ants Marching off of Under the Table and Dreaming. Number 2, 41 off of Crash. Number 3, The Stone off of Before These Crowded Streets. Number 4, Mercy. We didn't talk about it, but man, this is a lyrically good tune. It's one of the only tunes where Dave plays piano.
Yeah.
And I think that right now, these lyrics mean quite a bit. This is one that you probably ought to read them along if you take the time to listen to this at all. Mercy's definitely got a message that's worth paying attention to. And this is off of...
Away from the World?
Yeah, that seems right. 5, Don't Drink the Water. This is also off Before These Crowded Streets?
Yeah.
Yeah. Number 6, we put Warehouse, Under the Table and Dreaming. Number 7, another song we didn't talk about, but hard to leave it off, Bartender. This is another one about, maybe anyone's relationship with God, but maybe specifically about Dave's. Yeah. And again, got the themes of, we're going to die and all the gold doesn't matter once you're dead, kind of stuff. And live, this is a killer tune live.
Yeah, the intro is amazing.
Well, and Carter's that march that he's got going on, he kind of does a similar march on the one that was on that Adam Sandler movie.
Where Are You Going?
Yeah. It's like the groove is similar to Where Are You Going? But Bartender, I think, is the more hip of those marchy kind of grooves that he does. Number 8, I got my number 1 on there, Minarets. If you're a fan of this band, go back and listen to this one, guys. This is a good tune.
Recently is really good too, and that's off that same album.
Yeah, Recently is another really good. I think Remember Two Things is just a fantastic album. Number 9 is the third one that we agreed just kind of came on. We wanted to have something from a newer record that we both felt kind of hit home lyrically and meant something to us. So we put Samurai Cop on. And for me specifically, my good friend and bandmate Grover, his daughter was born like the Saturday after this album dropped. And so I was listening to it, and it's about welcoming a new life to the world, and thinking about parenting and the struggles that young kids are going through from their perspective a bit. And I think it's a very thoughtful, insightful tune. And it's not a new tune. It's on a newer album. They've been playing this song for years, but they finally got around to recording it. And, I think that, like, another one where, Carter's just monstrously playing this song too. This is a real drum feature. And then number 10, Typical Situation got on. Another one from Under the Table and Dreaming. I think we're a little bit heavy toward the older stuff. But I think that's where the band really got its heyday and popular. And the newer stuff, I think, is a transition that suffers a lot from personnel changes. I don't think that they're not good by any means. I think that this is a great band to still continue to go see live, but for me, it's not the same. It would be a different experience. It wouldn't be the same nostalgic
I
experience.
felt like they were pushing the envelope earlier on more, what they can do musically. And now it feels like they're at a good place, and Dave's older, he's got kids. So majority of his songs are about growing older, becoming a parent, kind of those things, which the songs are a little more relaxed too.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that too. His daughters have got to be like almost mid-20s by now.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you just don't think about time passing that way until you think about, other people's kids. It's like, oh, they're probably at college now. They're not little girls running around.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So I'm really happy with this list. I feel like this is a good list that represents someone who had never listened to Dave. And I think a list that for people who have been longtime Dave fans to kind of go and listen to some things that might not be on their list, but hopefully we gave you some things to think about with them that give you some enjoyment out of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about with you before we bump off here is you're also a painter. I remember that you had all these paintings, and you and I are also kind of nerds of a similar feather. We're both Dave Matthews fans and Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
And you do a lot of Star Wars art.
I do.
And I think that's super cool, man. So, yeah. Do you do commissions and stuff? Is that?
Yeah. I've been trying to invest more time into it. So me and Christina also host paint nights occasionally too when we have some free time. My mom is an artist, so she was the painter and stuff. I kind of sketched and when I was younger, but I just got into painting like maybe 5 years ago.
Okay.
It was whenever COVID happened, like me and Christina couldn't go out, and we just kind of had date night at home, and we're having wine, and we're like, let's just, have some wine and paint and relax. And we both kind of got into it a lot, and people started asking about our paintings and wanting to buy them. So we're like, oh, okay. So, but it was just an enjoyment for us. And I mean, being the Star Wars nerd that I am, I love all the visuals of Star Wars, and so I have fun diving into the details and painting that stuff. So I do a lot of Star Wars paintings. I'm actually doing a Kylo Ren portrait right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
So if people wanted to reach out to you for art stuff on top of the music stuff, how would they reach out? What's a good way to get a hold of you for?
Just through any of my socials. So at Tyler Bates, I think I'm at BluesBates94 on Instagram.
Okay.
But Tyler Bates on Facebook and stuff. And yeah.
Cool. Send me all that stuff and I'll put it in the show notes so people can just link it to you. Cool. All right, guys. Well, that's it. Dave Matthews, done. Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, man.
Nick. Have a nice day.